All right, thank you, Raina, and welcome to the last Michael's painting demo of 2001. And we have kind of a fun one today. We're going to be working from a painting by an artist named Milton Avery. It'll once again sort of be the guideline. I mean, it won't be, we're not trying to do an exact replica here, but it's a good one. It's sort of a nice, easy, approachable landscape painting, and I'll throw in some techniques that I did months ago about how you can use other materials with watercolor, as we'll be working in watercolor today. So, just some alternative mark making things and a few little end of the year kind of clearinghouse fun stuff that we'll try for this demo today. Okay, great. And happy to see a lot of you here. And let's go right into our supply list, which is sort of the standard fare with watercolor. We've got the 3 primary colors, and then the 2 yellow ochre and raw umber, which are more earth tones. And then we've got a white, and then there's actually quite a few other paints that I may introduce as part of this big set that's the photograph of that is in the picture here. So we've actually got 24 different colors that you can use. So really any combination of colors you have, as long as you've got your primary colors, you're good. And then you'll be needing some sort of rag or a paper towel, some tape, watercolor paper, and then a variety of watercolor brushes. Let's see, a palette of some sort. And that pretty much covers it. I've got a few other kind of surprise guests, which I'll show, but they're not, they're not anything too elaborate, like, things like toothpicks and blotted up paper towels and things like that. But we can introduce those as we go. And then here is the picture that we'll be working from. This is, like I said, Milton Avery, who was a painter of the 20th century and an American painter, and was sort of known for his kind of very loose modernist style. Would sort of use color as he felt, not as necessarily he saw. Although this one is a fairly good approximation of kind of a realist color palette. And I'll go over that as we go along. The one thing that I want you to notice about this picture, and as I'm talking, feel free to take a screenshot of this so you can use it and maybe see it a little bit better. There's a lot of kind of white in here, and this white is from my kind of poring over it before class started, was him just not covering every square inch of the page. And I'm going to try and replicate that as best I can with sort of the technique of how I apply the paint. So a lot of areas are just sort of like kind of shimmery and have a lot of white poking through, and I'm really going to try and get into that as we do the painting today. And this being our last one of the year, I want to get right into it. As usual, as we're working along, if you have questions or if something's going in the direction that you're not excited about and you want to ask a question, just feel free to put those into the chat, and then Raina will relay them to me and we can maybe troubleshoot any problems that you have. Okay, so here we go. I'm using paper that is smaller than I usually do. It's a 6x9, with the idea that this being for those of you, how many of you have gotten all of your shopping done for the holidays? That's a rhetorical question. You don't have to, just suddenly freak out and realize you haven't gotten all your shopping done. But a 6x9 piece of paper makes a good gift, easy to put into an simple, small frame. And that's kind of the idea of working a little smaller. So, this being the season, we're gonna try and maybe help some people out here. All right, I am going to sketch this one out ahead of time, and it's going to be very, very basic. With a landscape, probably your most important thing to get mapped out is the horizon line. I'm using a blue oil-based colored pencil. but really anything will work. If you've got just sort of a regular, sort of a graphite pencil, this is an HB pencil or a number 2 pencil or whatever, it works fine. I like to use these being paintings and being colorful paintings. I want to use a colored pencil to give myself a little bit of the option for putting down a little bit of color. So I'm just going to first kind of map out the horizon here. There's kind of some rolling hills in the background, and just give myself a little sense of where things are going to end up. You do not have to do this part. If you don't have anything sort of standing by, that's totally fine. I'm just kind of doing it as a little guidepost to the way things are organized here. Another big piece of this one is kind of this big curl right here, this yellow field. There's another little tree right here that I'll get sort of more of a foreground tree. And it kind of comes down like this, and then it curves into that little road like so, and then across right to the edge of that tree. And then we got these 2 little trees kind of coming up here, these little spindly trees. Once again, just putting them off to the left, not measuring this out exactly. And you can always use colored pencils as kind of to enhance the watercolor that you're going to do. So, you can kind of use this as an element to your painting. I've chosen blue because there's a fair amount of cooler colors that are sort of at the root. They're blue hills, kind of yellow-green fields, the foliage of the trees. But if you wanted to do something kind of on the other end, something a little warmer, that would work too, or just a graphite, which is a little bit more neutral. It really depends upon kind of how you're feeling as you're laying this down. And then that's probably going to be enough for that. Okay, so one question that we've had in the past when there's been kind of white spots popping out in a watercolor is the use of what's called masking fluid or Frisket. If you have that, I do not have it. Actually, I do have it with me, but I'm not going to use it. If you have it and you want to use it, especially for like maybe the path right here, or this little stretch of white here, or even some spots, especially up in the sky, you could put a little masking fluid up there, but it is not definitely something that I'm going to do or that you need to do. And if you're not familiar with it, obviously you won't even know how to do it. So don't worry about that. But it is, if you have it and it's something you want to try, this would be a good painting to use it in, because there is a fair amount of exposed white, especially along that little slash there, and to a lesser degree in the path. So feel free to do that. I'm using an oil-based colored pencil. These round ones here are usually oil-based. That is so that when I put the watercolor down, this will not bleed into the colors that I'm laying down. So that's my rationale there. If you wanted something that would sort of blend with the colors, you could go with a more water-based pencil, which is this one. It's got sort of more of a hexagonal or whatever shape that is. It's not round. So those are your choices, and either of them work, and either of them are valid. So I will leave that at your discretion. Okay.
We do have a question from Margaret about paper.
Yeah, go for it.
What's the best watercolor paper for really detailed work? Cold pressed, hot pressed, or like a certain weight or brand?
That's a good question. First of all, I'll show you what I'm using. And this is a pad of Artist Loft paper, which is sort of the Michaels brand. And it's 140 pounds. Let me turn it right so you can see it there. 140 pound, which is preferred. It's heavier. It's got some tooth to it. And it is, I don't know if it doesn't say if it's cold. Yes, it does say cold press right there. If you look really close, cold press. The hot press is probably the best for really fine detail work because it's really smooth. This is actually, this one that I just showed you is a pretty smooth. It's definitely smooth for cold press. So this would be a good, if you're not used to hot press or cold press or don't know the difference. This is kind of a nice in-between one because it's not as pebbly and as textured as a lot of cold press is, but it's also not quite as smooth as hot press is. And that's the main difference between hot press and cold press is the texture. So this one has a little bit more of a smoother texture like hot press, but it is still technically cold press. And I think it has something to do with after the paper is kind of formed, they run it through a hot press and that smushes it down and makes it smoother. The cold press, I don't think has that kind of mashing down, but I'm really just honestly just guessing as to how that works. I just do know the end result. Hot press is generally speaking smoother. It's kind of like an illustrator's paper. So yeah, that's a great question. Your paper is really kind of your first big choice because it's going to determine how everything lays down on the page. Okay. So I am not, if you've watched my watercolor demos, I usually like to kind of pre-wet things. I'm not going to really do that with this one because I have a lot of that kind of open paper and it's really hard once you do that because the pigment really spreads once you lay that down. I'm just going to kind of go at it with a sort of more dry brush approach. So I've pre-wet my brush and I'm just going to do this kind of by spots, and I'm going to do this one from kind of the top down, more so just to sort of isolate each little area and then just sort of talk about each one as I'm doing it, and maybe doing a few little special things in each area. The first color that I want to show you here is Payne's Gray. This is kind of a muted color. And it is a gray, but it's kind of a blue gray, almost a purplish blue gray in some cases. It varies from brand to brand. This is, again, the Artist Loft brand of all these. I have 3 trays like this, and they're all filled with different colors. And Payne's Gray is a real hallmark color, or and by hallmark, I mean, it's kind of like the calling card of watercolor. Payne, I can't forget it. I forget his first name. But he was a British painter of, I believe, the late 1700s, early 1800s, sort of the golden age of British watercolor painting. And they named a color after him. And Payne's Gray is that color. And you'll see me kind of mixing it with a lot of these colors. I won't mix it with any of the yellow in here, but maybe some of this green and some of these back here will get some Payne's Gray because it's a nice color. It's a cool color, and it tends to soften colors up, not make them so bright and intense. So I'm going to just have that one as a color that I use kind of periodically. So I'm going to start up in the sky. And so the sky is bluish, but it's not this blue. It's not a ultramarine, French ultramarine blue. So I'm going to start off, like I promised, by using a little bit of Payne's Gray to kind of soften it up. So it's a little bit of sort of a pure blue and then a Payne's Gray. So it's kind of somewhere in between the two with, I definitely want it to be blue. Oop, there it is. So something like this. So I'm taking a little bit of the Payne's Gray and taking a little bit of the ultramarine, and I'm just going to lay in some areas, but definitely keep some of it open. It has kind of this look of clouds that are kind of a little broken across the sky, just slightly hazy day. So I'm just leaving a lot of space open as I'm putting it down. And this is much more of a dry brush, meaning the paper is dry. The brush itself is not inundated with water. It's not really soaked to the bone with pigment, but it allows you to just, wherever you put the paint, that's where it stays. Unlike the sort of the pre-wetting, the wet into wet approach, which is like you put it in here and it kind of bleeds everywhere. This is a little bit more direct. It's what you maybe call a direct painting technique. Wherever you put it down, that's where the painting goes, or the paint goes. Just kind of laying it in with the idea that I'm working around some areas that are a little bit cloudier. All right, so that's pretty straightforward and fairly easy. Once I've got this color down, though, wherever I put it, it will sort of behave like kind of a wet into wet. So it will blend a little bit as you're putting it down. And then I'm just going to proceed right into this back hill over here. It's almost the same color, but it's darker. So I'm just really tweaking the value a little bit. So I'm going to take some of that blue, add some more of that Payne's gray, but it's just going to be more, it's going to be more heavily pigmented. It's going to be darker. And remember, all of this paint up here is still wet. So I want to kind of, tease it along the edge so it doesn't get too bleedy into those different areas. Now this is right off the bat, I'm looking at this. This is a little bit too dark for my eye, and it needs to get a little bit bluer. It's a little too gray. So I'm just going to throw in some proper, this is actually a cobalt blue. So I'm going to make it slightly different. And then I'm just going to kind of blend the two together. This is one area of this painting where there's not a lot of sort of sparkly white areas. So I can kind of get away with, blending it all as kind of one piece. And then you'll notice that I'm just going to kind of, take a little bit of this, draw it over here. We get ourselves a little bit of an even. And I really like, I've actually not used this paper before. It's really nice. It does a good job of, absorbing things, not breaking down if it gets a lot of water in it. It's not, a lot of sort of really cheap paper will get will start to kind of fall apart, really. I mean, there's no other way to say it. And this paper is kind of taking the abuse pretty well.
Margaret wants to know if it's scrubbable.
Scrubbable. You mean like kind of going back and forth like this and working back into it? I think that's what you mean. But I'm sort of scrubbing it. I mean, I don't like to paint like this in watercolor because any abrasion that you put on the paper is going to potentially weaken it. And I've been doing that for a fair amount here, and it seems to be holding up just fine. So I would say based on that, it's scrubbable. So yes. All right. So now I'm going to.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, yeah, go for it.
Sue was wondering if oil-based colored pencils would work okay with oil paints.
With oil paint?
Paints, yeah.
They would probably do the same thing that water-based would do with watercolors, in that as soon as you start putting oil down, it would kind of, the drawing might go away and kind of combine with the paint. That would be my guess. Have I ever done that? I purposely try to do the opposite work. If I'm working with two media, I try to make them the opposite. Like if I'm working with oil paints, I'll do water-based pencils and vice versa with watercolors. For the reason that I just explained, I don't really like, I want the drawing to sort of remain intact as I'm working. So my guess is with oil paints, that would probably do what water-based would do here. So, but I have actually never tried it, but I haven't tried it because I kind of know what happens with other media that does that. So that's a kind of a roundabout answer, but I think we get the idea. All right, so there's another little band here that's kind of a greenish band. So I'm just going to take this blue here that I've been working with, this kind of muted blue, and just throw a little bit of yellow. There we go. Yep, that looks good. So I'm relying on mixing my color kind of on the palette a little bit more today. Let's see how that looks. That's a little bit, that might work. Let's try it. Milton Avery, he was sort of a school painters that were not trying to be super hyper realistic. They were more kind of playing with spontaneity and you know, a sort of a more playful attitude towards it rather than planning it out and get everything just right. So I'm going to sort of take that spirit and run with it here and just let this be a little bit more yellow. I could definitely add a little blue to this to kind of get it more true to that, but I think I'll just leave it for the time being. I can always come back to it. And then the last bit I want to do here is kind of this more brown color. So I'm going to take this color up here, which is, I believe is a burnt sienna. Yes, it is. It's definitely behaving like that. And again, this is kind of a bright, it may not look like it to you, but it's kind of a reddish brown. So I'm going to take a little bit more of our Payne's gray here as kind of a neutralizer. I want it to be a little duller. And I'm just going to do that, keeping in mind that I've got these little trees up here. So I kind of want to work around them. So I'm just going to kind of brush it in, but also with the idea that this, you can see this little branch here that I've left exposed. And I'll do the same thing with this one here. Just kind of work around it. This is probably a little lighter. This is definitely, not probably, it is definitely a little lighter, but I will come back and add it to, all I'm trying to do here is just kind of carve out the shape a little bit. So I'm not worried about it being exactly the right color. And that's the thing with watercolor that, you know, sort of one of the mantras of watercolor is work from light to dark. So I'm just blocking it in as a general color shape at this moment, and then I'll worry about getting it a little darker. So I've got the shape in there. It's definitely not dark, but now that all of this is wet, I can come in and just apply a little bit more heavy pigment in there. So I'll take some of this. And yeah, it seems about right. Had a little bleeding in here of the green. So I'm just trying to do a little preparing, repairing. There we go. And later on, I'm going to come back with this kind of dark, almost ink-like edge to kind of describe the tree a little bit more. But for the time being, I'm just trying to get the color right and also the value of that color. There's a little bleeding into the sky right there. Not too bad, so I'm not going to fret about it. But that's sort of one of the dangers of watercolors. If something is still open and still wet, it will bleed into similar areas that are also damp. All right. Or, you know, I say danger, but it also is one of the reasons that a lot of people love watercolor. Is this sort of, you get that inadvertent mixing. So again, going back to that brown with a little bit of Payne's gray in it. The brown being a burnt sienna or even a burnt umber would work. Just any kind of earthy brown color. All right. So just kind of throwing in a little texture here at the end, sort of a little bit more kind of dark little accents. And since it's still wet, it'll kind of it'll work its way into it. There we go. All right. So where shall I go now? That will come back. Don't worry. It always comes back. It's like my cat. Goes out at night and it always comes back. All right.
Kathy wants to know what brush you're using with each of these colors.
Oh, yeah. Sorry about that. This is a size 6 round brush that I've been using pretty much from the start. And I'm probably going to use it for most of this because this is it's fairly small. So normally I would start with something like this. If this were like a 9x12, probably start with something like this, or maybe even something bigger like this, which is a filbert. But I'm going right into the rounds, and fairly small, number 6. So yeah, nothing too exotic. I'm just noticing here that this is a little bit more brown, like kind of a bright brown than that is. If I wanted to, I could come in with some more of that Payne's gray and just kind of dab it in there and integrate it. I'm just going to keep it like that, and maybe I can change it later. We'll just see. I'll just sort of do this a little differently than I've done some in the past. All right, so now up here, I'm going to go into this hill, just working my way down again. And I think I'm just going to go with almost straight Payne's gray here to start, and we'll see how that looks. Maybe a little bit of blue. Yeah, something like that. All right, so it's kind of like this one up here, but more on the gray side of things. And once again, not worrying too much about it being exactly right, because I'm once again just want to kind of establish the general lay of the land, figuratively and literally. And I also want it to be a little separate from this one. It's a little bit more green too. Maybe what I'll do instead of that blue is come back with kind of a green. So maybe a real strong kind of green grass green. See how that looks. And just letting the two kind of work together, playing nice. That's a little bit more like it's a little bit too green now. So I'll just go back to the Payne's gray. Kind of go back and forth, kind of mixing on the fly a little bit rather than trying to mix it up too formally. Kind of there's nice little green patches and gray patches. So I think I'll live with this for the time being. You can always come back to it. Or it's, good enough for folk music, as they say, good enough for watercolor. That'll work. This area is a lot bigger in my painting. Actually, I'm going to pull this down actually now. Could do a little redrawing. I didn't like how high this was. This should probably come down a little lower. So I'm just modifying my drawing, my design of it, bringing some of that Payne's gray in, knocking this tree down a little bit here. Let's see, how else can I do this? Take some of that green. There we go. And just pulling it across like that. Maybe pull some of this darker stuff up here. Still got some, a lot of breathing room, a lot of little white areas popping through. This green actually is really close to this little tree here. So being an economical type painter, I'm going to do that. Payne's gray and some of this green. I'm just going to blot this in right now. There's a fair amount of white in that one, so I'm going to be kind of a little loose with it and let some spots come through. Okay, we'll just let that. I think that looks pretty good. All right, any other color like this? This little spot here kind of comes through. This green kind of comes in here. This is something I do all the time. If I see something that's like, all right, that, and that, they're kind of in the same category, kind of like I did up here with the sky, sort of had a Payne's gray blue and just, sort of integrated myself into different areas that relate. That's what I'm doing at this stage. All right, and I'm going to change things a little bit here. In the sense that this big yellow field here, I'm just going to let that kind of migrate over into here. It doesn't really do it as much in the original, but like I said, we're not we're not being super beholden to Mr. Avery. So I'm just going to start with a straight yellow, like a strong lemony yellow. And then I've got over here more of a cadmium yellow, which is a little bit slightly darker and richer, almost kind of more orange. And I'm just going to block this in. This is going to be too bright, but I know that going in, but I'm just going to establish the shape. Keeping a lot of open space, pretty dry brush, fair amount of pigment actually, it's pretty saturated. And once again, here's the continuation of that tree down like that. But you can see the approach here with the application of the paint is just a lot looser than if we were being, sort of hyper realistic to, trying to match colors that matched an actual landscape that we were looking at or something like that. This is a little bit more playful. It's kind of a fun. I thought this was a good one to end the year on. It's kind of loose. And this is a good example here where you can see I'm kind of going over top of my drawing. And if this were water-based, that blue would kind of leak into that yellow and kind of create this green halo, which could be interesting, could also be not interesting. So I just like to err on the side of, okay, if I'm gonna put some green in there, I want to do it myself. I mean, inevitably you're going to get some hopefully happy accidents, a la Bob Ross, but sometimes the accidents are not so happy. Stubbing your toe in the kitchen is not a happy accident. So sometimes that's the way you got to look at this too. All right. So there's a lot of yellow in here. I'm just going to dull this up now. So I've got the base on. So working light to dark. So I put my light base color down here. Now I'm going to mix in this kind of dirty green and just slightly tone it down a little bit. But I may leave little touches of yellow, get a little more expressionistic with my color. So some areas might be a little darker, some areas might be a little greener. Some I might keep more yellow. See, that one's got a little bit more green in it. Hopefully the Milton Avery family estate will not be too offended by our modification of this wonderful little landscape. Milton Avery mostly worked in oils, so I was happy to find a nice little watercolor of his. He's just got kind of a nice loose approach to things. Oh, there we go. Just kind of dirtying up the yellow that I've already established, but also leaving a little bit kind of popping through. This is a good thing about art in general is, there's rules to art. There's things that make things go easier, but it's not like it's not like being a doctor where it's like, well, I think I'll try this brain surgery like this today and see how it goes. It's not really the kind of experimentation we want in our brain surgeons, but with art, it's encouraged to kind of, figure out what works and then modify it and make kind of it your own approach and your own attitude and personality to it. So it's like brain surgery, but not that like brain surgery. All right. There we go. It's kind of unifying all this green. Yeah, it's kind of got some nice texture to it. A fair amount of variety of color as well. And it's got some, some openness to it. So it's got sort of all the elements that we're we're working with here. All right, where are we going to go next? I think maybe since I've got this kind of green out here, there's sort of a nice, you know, this kind of green in here. So I'm just going to move down into this. We're making pretty good headway here. So I'm going to turn up, just try and mix this color ahead of time and not use the yellow underpainting. Because if you look at the separation between these two areas, I definitely see more yellow here. So that was kind of the idea and attitude I was after. So this foreground area, I'm really doing kind of a loose, light and dry application. So let me just get you up a little bit closer here. So you can see a lot of the openness, you know, like this and down in here, and even up here, you know, you've got these little spots coming through. So that's kind of what I'm shooting for in kind of this approach as we're moving our way along here. So I'll just do a little bit more over here. There is that big streak up here that I want to kind of keep intact. So I'm kind of working around it. If you've got that masking fluid, you're ahead of the game by now. I'm going to add a little texture to it as well, just to sort of throw some of this in a little bit more. Yeah, it's pretty good. It's a little bit of darker green up there, and I'm going to actually intensify it a little bit. I'll put a little bit of this more strong green. I believe this is a, what did I put, like a permanent green, or oh, there's another one in here called like a forest green, or sap green is another color. That might be a nice, just to sort of break up a little bit of the dirty greens that we've been doing. Maybe even throw a little bit more intensity in there. Yeah, there we go. And so, you know, if you're out working like in the landscape, like doing a painting from observation, you know, you'll see little like, oh, it's sort of a light green, and it gets to a dark green, and then gets sort of to a more gray green. You can kind of make these little decisions about, all right, I'm just gonna, you know, maybe this has got more of that really strong, intense green here, and then this is going to go more yellow. You can kind of tweak it with the idea that, you know, I'm just trying to separate this area from that area, and this kind of acts as kind of a nice little barrier to things. So that's the idea here. And I'm going to do something a little different with this one. There's not really any warm colors in here, and if there is, it's probably right up here. But I'm going to put a little warm touch in here. So I'm just going to take kind of an orange, which is already mixed up for me. And I'm just going to lay it in there. Just a punch of a little bit brighter color. Just to have it there, and because it's mine and it's the last painting of the year, so I can experiment a little bit. And while I'm in the neighborhood, these little trees here, and this is all pretty dry now, so I don't have to worry about it kind of leaking out. I'm just going to take straight Payne's gray and kind of put the, oops, I don't mean to go up that high. What? Oh, well, that's fine. Suddenly it's a much taller tree. So maybe a little bit of that, maybe throw a little bit more of that green in. So just making some nice dark colors now that I've more or less got everything laid out. Now it's just a matter of kind of intensifying areas that need it. So I'm seeing this color here, and I'm seeing a lot of it over there. So I'm just going to take some of this Payne's gray, a lot of that green, and I'm going pretty heavy with it. Let's see here. This is actually not how I would encourage you to kind of use your palette, because I'm kind of bleeding into everything. If I ever need to get kind of back to, you know, sort of some cleaner areas, I would probably just wash that out. Just take the whole thing over to the sink and just kind of lay it in the water and start fresh. So once again, using dry brushes. This is all pretty dry in here. So let's see how far does it go down. All right, about there. Seems about good. All right, over here, same thing. Maybe go a little greener over there. So I'm just gonna push it more towards the green side. Yeah, so that's slightly green. It doesn't show up as well on the screen, but it is definitely greener. So working pretty dark in here. This goes all the way to the top, or almost to the top. On mine, it goes to the top anyway. So saving these darker passages for the end, as we're getting down towards the end a little bit. I think we'll have a little bit more time today to show and tell, do a little spotlighting of people's work. I'm going to throw a little bit. This is kind of a dark earth color. This is probably like a Van Dyke brown or a raw umber, something like that. I'm just going to add a little different flavor to it. So Payne's gray, raw umber, and a little bit of this green, this more vibrant green. And I just want to darken this edge a little bit. You can kind of see how it carves out this shape here a little bit more. It's by kind of going around it. So still keeping, you know, a good amount of open paper on there to let it breathe a little bit. So this even darker color that I'm throwing in can add a little texture into this shape. Let's move it out there so we can see it a little better. There we go. All right. Any other? Oh, we got some dark stuff down here, and I can start adding these little trunks of the trees and things. I'm just going to start adding a little bit of texture. This color actually works really good for doing that. And I'll just sort of describe it like that. Again, not being like, oh, there's a branch that I missed. I'm not worried about that. I'm just trying to make it work as a painting on my page. A little bit more darker stuff down there I can add. Something like that. Yeah, that seems about right. Let's see where else. There's a few other darker spots in here. Going back to that color that I just had, this is it's a lot wetter than I want it. So if you ever put too much water on, because this would take forever to dry, I'll just blot it out a little bit. Just reapply it with a little less water. Yeah, it's not too bad. What else? We got a lot of empty space in here. I think there's some houses or something in here that are kind of a warm earthy color. So I'll go back to this burnt sienna, and I'm going to throw a little bit of red in it, just sort of to make it slightly different here. It'll be kind of a little counterbalance to this warm. So we have 1, 2, 3, kind of a nice little triangle of warmer colors here. Looks like these are like the roof of some barns or something like that. I don't know, giant loaves of bread. I don't know exactly what they are. I think they are barns. Definitely warm though. Just look at them as shapes and as colors rather than trying to figure it out. All right, yeah. These look like it could be like baled hay or something like that. Something a little bit more rural countryside.
Hey, Mike,
All right,
which red did you say that was?
Pardon?
Which red did you say that was?
The red that I put in, so I used burnt sienna and then a little bit of what I think it's called vermilion. Yeah, but like a cadmium red would work. It's just any kind of bright red. So, sort of a reddish brown, and then I made it a little redder with a primary red. So vermilion or cadmium will work just fine. Let's see here. There's a little bit more green behind here, so I'll just take some of this, maybe add a little yellow, make it a little mellower. I'll just put this right in there. Yeah, there we go. So carving out these trees, whoops, there it goes. It was being so good for a long stretch there. In the last couple of weeks, it's blinked out. It'll be back. It always comes back. There we go. All right, so I got pretty much everything that I want in there. I'm going to keep this, well, maybe I'll put a little bit more kind of hints of green in there. Yeah, I think that's a little better. All right, now we'll go back to making these really strong trunks here. And I've got a couple of wet spots. Like this is wet right here. So I'm going to try and work around those a little bit. Actually, there's a little dark edge here. Just put that in. Maybe add a little bit more, little texture in there. If you're feeling adventurous, you could put a cow in there. I'm not feeling adventurous. All right, there's a nice ridge of kind of darker green. So I'm going to take some of that, work that right along here. And so I'm kind of opening this back up, meaning I'm wetting this brown and just using that brown to kind of modify my green a little bit. So it's more of a brownish green, but I just want it to be darker right along that edge a little bit. So I'm just throwing that in. Okay, so let's go and do basically the final touches here. I'm not really enthusiastic about, maybe I'll put like the hint of a shadow. I'm basically sort of a more realist or representational painter. So I'm like, I think a little shadow right there. Milton Avery would probably not be pleased with that touch, but oh well. All right, so now I'm going to go for a real dark, almost into the realm of a straight black, but I'm going to mix it. So I'm just taking some of the Payne's gray, some of that dark brown, and maybe a dark blue, like a ultramarine blue or cobalt, or if you're really feeling comfortable, maybe a phthalo. I won't disparage phthalo blue like I usually do, but it is a pretty strong color. All right, so all I'm going to do here, and actually I should do this with a smaller brush, so I'm going to do that. I'm going to switch gears here and just use a much smaller brush. This is number 1. It's very pointy, and it'll be perfect for doing all this kind of finishing touch work. So I'm just going to there we go. And if you don't have a steady hand, which very oftentimes I don't, there's a little bridge here. This is a piece of wood with 2 little knobs on the end. So it forms a bridge. So I can just put this anywhere I want and then lean my hand on it. This is your hot tip of the day. Last hot tip of 2021, the bridge. I brought this out rarely, but I use it quite a bit because it really just gives you much more confidence kind of going over these lines. And it's just old plywood, just anything you got laying around. It's nothing too elaborate. And now I can, with much more confidence, kind of build up a little bit more of the detail here. But this is the kind of stuff that you always want to leave until the end. Because if you put this stuff in early, you're just putting layers of paint over it, and it's going to disappear. It's going to get, you know, sort of consumed by, you know, the latest layer of green or yellow or whatever you've got going on. So waiting for this stuff, and then also waiting for everything to dry is pretty important. Because if I were to put this in and it were still wet, it would sort of bleed everywhere, and I'd have these big blooms of, you know, dark into these really nice subtle yellow areas. So you've got to be fairly strategic about it. And I'm just kind of creating my own little hint of tree. I'm going full winter here. There's no foliage on here. I think in this one there is sort of a hint of some straggling leaves, but it's winter, right? At least where you guys are. Let's go. Let's go there. All right, what else? Any other? I could maybe add a little bit over here as well. So give us a few minutes to have everybody show off their painting, see how it went. So it's kind of, it's very liberating to kind of paint like this, because you're under no obligation. It's like, oh, that doesn't look like the old country road that I grew up on or whatever. It's the spirit of the place. It's a more expressive way to describe information. I mean, there's a lot of people maybe that have been to the spot that go, oh yeah, that's exactly the way it is. Let's throw this in a little bit too. But it gets the point across, and it's a lot more freeing to kind of. I don't normally in my own work, I don't really paint like this, but it's always fun to do it. Oh, I don't know, I'm just making stuff up now. Just putting a few extra little touches in here. Let's see what else. Maybe just put that. Doing a little outlining, like sort of Henri Matisse. Milton Avery didn't do it quite as much in his work, but these kind of dark outlines kind of add a nice little solidity to some of the shapes. All right. I don't know, that was kind of fun. Oh, the other stuff I wanted to show you. I didn't even get to it. I was so consumed with it. If you look, especially up in here, there's kind of these nice furrowed little lines. A good way you can do that, and I'll see if I can do it right here at the end. I'm just going to get a nice green, sort of yellow green up in there. And let's see if I can do it. It's already been colored, so this might be a moot point. Is you can kind of score it, like kind of gouge into it a little bit. You have to be careful when it's wet, though. If it's wet, it'll start to kind of fall apart. So I'm going to tread lightly here. I'm just going to do maybe 3. So nothing's happening, but when I do the application of at least on a blank piece of paper, yeah, there's a little bit showing up. It's better if you do it while it's, you don't have something on it. Let me see if I can get it to. So sometimes you can pre-score it, and then sometimes you can go over it like this. Yeah, it's starting to, let me just give you a close-up here. You can see the hints of it here. I think if I go over it, yeah, there we go. So if you do this, just kind of scoring it a little bit, what that does is it compacts the paper. But like I said, while it's wet, you got to be really careful because it can shred. I'm doing this really pretty lightly, but this is a nice little, yeah, see, it's starting to peel up there. So I'm gonna just keep it to those 3 there. But if you did this beforehand, it would give you a good idea, and then you could just lightly go over it like I did. And it does, you can't even really see any kind of damage or anything to the paper. But if I were to keep going over it, that would be a bad development. But it's kind of a nice way to add a little texture. You know, if you wanted to sort of add a little dots in here to create a little, you know, like spots of scrub or something like that, you can do it. It's often like if you wanted to do a fence line, something like that. It's just a nice little technical thing you can play around with watercolor, and you know, just give it a try on your next one. All right, I think I've gotten to where I want to go, and we've got a few minutes left, as we tend to have. So let's maybe go. Let's go to some spotlights for people that want to embolden themselves. So you can start your New Year's resolution. I'm going to be a public speaker. I'm going to show my work to the world. This could be your first step. All right. Oh, Sarah, there you go. Sarah, the most reliable student, person, participant. I've seen you every week. That's great. Awesome. I love those kind of bluish gray clouds. Those look awesome. Really nice. Great. Thanks, Sarah. That's good. Oh, all right, Ed, we were talking about you beforehand, and we were trying to figure out your name. And I said Diane, but I can't remember what it was. Write it down and we'll come back to you, because you did it last time and we remembered it, and then we forgot about it. But that looks awesome. Really nice, intense color as well.
And I just want to point out, she was a little late getting to class due to connectivity issues, and it still looks awesome.
Oh, okay. But she's here. She made it, and she made a painting. That looks awesome. So yeah, cool. All right. And we got Sherry. Oh, right. Nice. You sort of went the nice muted route. That looks really good. Kind of that sort of late fall palette. Yeah. And then Morna, you went in with, it looks like you went in with almost some ink, like an ink pen. You can definitely use ink pens to kind of enhance watercolors once it's dry. It's a great way to kind of add that line work that you can see there. And Bob, yeah, that looks great. You went much more descriptive with their barns. They're not giant loaves of bread in the landscape. Those are definitely barns. Excellent. And Christina, yeah, oh yeah, I love the sky in that one. That one looks particularly nice up in the sky. Define the cloud shapes a lot more than I did. Good. And Noah, all right. Very nice, clear, distinct color shapes in that one. I like that sort of blue right in the middle. That's a great idea. It's kind of like Arthur Dove. If you want to look up that name, he did some great work along these lines too. And Lisa, all right. Very nice. That nice bold shot of color right in the middle. That worked out great for that one. All right. And Marty, but not Marty. Somebody who's got Marty's as a iPad. That looks great. Ooh, I like that sort of earthy color up on the top, that sort of top back hill right in front of the trees. That's a really good choice. It's a nice progression back, sort of warm, cooler, cool. All right, Kylie, excellent. You went full pine trees with all of these dark trees. It is more of a pine forest now. That's good. That looks good. Getting those dark colors. And Cassie went full red. Exposed. Are you from Georgia? The Georgia clay? Is that the red Georgia clay? That looks like a nice hot pepper right in the middle of that landscape. That's awesome. And Becky, yeah. Yeah, definitely got the sky on that one. That looks awesome. Great. And Susan, oh, you got the furrows in there up on that back field. Very nice. And he kept that yellow really strong and intense. Good. Aaliyah. Very nice. Went sort of the orange red route on those kind of two warm touches in there. And you can see how dramatically it changes when people make different color choices for different areas. It's really interesting. And Sabrina. Yeah, that looks great. The orange and red there went much. I think Rita's trying again. She was holding it up. And Patty did a drawing. Awesome. I like how you left that yellow field kind of open and light. That's a nice choice, getting the value relationships. It's a really good idea if you're not sure of the painting to do a drawing first. All right, Kathy. Oh yeah, went full yellow. I like it. Yep, just little tweaks of the color just radically changes things. Lauren. Oh yeah, you went really dark and blue with that background mountain there. That looks great. And Diane, yeah, all right. Those sort of two small trees, kind of same color as those flanking trees on the right and left, is kind of a nice little triangle of dark there. And Kathy, oh, you went really big with your path there. I like that though. It's almost reads more as a river, which could work great. Yeah. And Glennis. I have a Glennis in one of my face-to-face classes. It's a name you don't see every day. That looks great. A little more subdued orange there coming through the middle. Yeah, nice. All right, awesome. Yeah, they really look nice. And it's, you know, like I said, this is one of those paintings where, you know, it's fairly simple. So any little tweaks that people do can really just, you know, sort of push it in a more expressive direction or a more descriptive, realist direction. So yeah, it doesn't take much to really kind of put your stamp on it. All right, folks. Well, 2021 is a wrap for us. We'll be back on, or I'll be back January 4th for a whole new series. We're going to be working in watercolor again after the break, but it is going to be a little bit different. You can feel free to, I'll leave it as a little teaser. Go check out the website and you can kind of read what we've got in mind. They're all up, I believe, at this stage. So you can check them out. And I hope to see you in 2022. Thank you, everybody, and have a great holidays and a happy new year. See you later and take care. Bye-bye.